Hey you guys, thanks for stopping by my channel. So I have a question. Have you ever been ghosted? Well, one of the benefits about being a therapist is that you get educated by your clients. And a couple years ago, I had a client and she talked about being ghosted. I didn't know what it was at the time, and apparently the look on my face let her know that I had no idea what she was talking about. So she went on to describe this experience to me. And it was disappointing to her because she described it as the relationship was moving in the right direction. They were getting along. She actually thought it was going to take off from there. And then he just disappeared. Like nothing. No text, no call, no nothing. Like he disappeared. And it really bothered her. And moving forward in her relationships, it continued to bother her because she wanted to know, why did he just disappear? And so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is a phenomenon that only happens to women. Men get ghosted too. I get it. But in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why men might disappear and some of the reasons that women may not think about. So I do have the opportunity of seeing both women and men in therapy, and the dynamics is so interesting. And one of the reasons why I like doing couples therapy is because I always start off with the couples together, and then the next session is always an individual, so that I can obviously hear more from their perspective, how they perceive themselves in the relationship, and then I bring them back together. And so what always comes up is that the same questions that I may have asked in the first session, that they either may not have answered or vaguely responded to, in their individual sessions, it goes into detail. And what I find is that women will often say that one of the reasons why the relationship isn't going well is because they have poor communication, or because their mate doesn't talk to them, or something related to that. And then when I meet with men in their individual sessions, not only do they talk, but they talk. And so I find it interesting that their girlfriends and wives and fiancés are saying one of the issues is he doesn't talk, or he doesn't know how to communicate. And yet in his therapy session, he goes on and on and on. But I'm saying all this to say that being able to work with men in therapy helped me gain a better understanding, I believe, with men. But it also helped me become a better woman in how I relate to men. Because there are just certain things I didn't know. Not only did I not know it, but it didn't even come to my mind that that could have been a reason why they were behaving in the way that they were behaving. And so one of the things that I want to talk about as it relates to why some men ghost, obviously there's not a all catch-all for the reason why men do these things, right? They happen for very specific reasons for that individual, but oftentimes we forget about some of these other possible reasons why they may be ghosting. So the first one I want to talk about is the guy who seems to be hitting it off well in the relationship. They seem to be moving forward, and immediately, let's say he's supposed to call her back or text her so they can connect that day, and she never hears from him again. And not because he's deceased, but she just don't hear from him again. Like, he doesn't return phone calls. He's not responsive to her at all. I want to talk about that situation first. So in that situation, women may often think that he ghosted her because maybe he was dating someone else. Possibility. Maybe he was married. Possibility. Or he's just a jerk. possibility. But one of the reasons why sometimes men ghost that I don't think we as women think about is none of those that was just mentioned, but it is possible that he ghosted because he was afraid. And if you're thinking afraid of what, he was afraid to move forward in the relationship. Maybe he didn't think the relationship was going to go as well as it was going. Maybe he didn't see himself in the beginning getting into a committed relationship, but at the rate that the relationship was moving, it was heading in that direction, and he was afraid. And not afraid that the relationship would be successful, but afraid of just that the relationship would be successful. So that requires him to do what? Like, there are going to be a lot of expectations that the woman most likely is going to have of him, maybe even marriage in the future, and he was afraid. Maybe he didn't feel like he was where he wanted to be when that time arrived to be with that particular person in the relationship, so he pulled away. It is a possibility that pure fear said, I can't do this anymore. And instead of him communicating that to her, he did not communicate it because he actually cared about her. Like, he was actually feeling this relationship. And to tell her that, hey, I'm afraid, may have caused her to perceive him in a different light. And he didn't want that. So instead of being honest and saying, yeah, I am afraid of where we're going and how fast we're going and what this could lead to, he just disappeared. Sometimes these gentlemen resurface when this happens, and sometimes they don't. But I do think that it is a possibility that this happens. And I'm saying this only because I've heard it in sessions. Like, men will talk about their deep, darkest fears in sessions. Men who their wives will say they have never seen cry will bawl crocodile tears in session. So hearing that the first couple of times, I started thinking, I never thought about that. Like, you afraid of a relationship? You a grown man. Who are you afraid of? I was wrong, because this wasn't a one out and done type of scenario with this guy. Several guys made reference to this example of just being afraid of what the next step looked like and the responsibility that was going to bring on to him. Whether he wasn't ready to take on that responsibility financially, he wasn't ready to take on that responsibility emotionally, or he just was afraid because he didn't have a role model of what that potentially looked like. So he disappeared. Another example that has come up why men disappear, and let me rewind. Like the young lady that sat in my office and introduced me to the term ghosted for the first time, she felt as though it was something that she had done, which is why it plagued her in future relationships, because she was trying to figure out, well, what did I do? Was it something I said? Was it something I did? And it just kept bothering her. In fact, it kind of broke up some future relationships because she was too busy focusing on why this other guy had ghosted her. And so I began to also notice that other women would somehow internalize the ghosting as it was something that they did, like it was their fault. Even though they may have reported that the relationship seemed as though it was moving in the right direction, the reason why he disappeared was because of them. Like, they did something. And so, again, there are those scenarios where that happens. But I think another option that is possible that I have heard in the session is not that the woman did something, but the man realized that it was him. Like, that he was screwed up, that he was so jacked up, and that his past behavior and his probably current and future behavior was not going to be good enough for her. And because, again, he actually liked being in a relationship with her, and he cared about her, that he didn't want to hurt her in the manner in which he had hurt some other women. So instead of him saying this, that, hey, I ain't a good dude, I ain't been a good dude, and I'm probably not gonna be a good dude with you, he didn't. He just disappeared. Now, I hear this in sessions too. Now, this comes with men who now have regret, because either they've left that woman because they didn't think that they would be a good man for her, and now they're in another relationship or even married, and the person who they're now in a relationship or married to isn't the woman who they left, who they thought was a better fit for them. So now there's these feelings of guilt and resentment towards the current relationship, but guilt about what they did in that last relationship when they ghosted her. So yeah, it had nothing to do with her. In fact, she was a catch. It was him. Like, he knew he wasn't about that, that he wasn't gonna be no good dude. And so he just disappeared. And then you have obviously the ones that I kind of started off with, that, you know, they ghosted because they thought this was going to be a one-hit quit it, and it turned into something else, and that's not what they really wanted, because they still want to be out there in them streets doing this one-hit quit it with people. So they disappeared. Or some of them disappeared because, yeah, they really are married. But I just wanted to do this video because the ghosting thing happens apparently quite frequently, which is unfortunate. But I want to just say to men that, or say this about men, that some of them are ghosting just because they aren't ready to be in relationships. But others are ghosting because they just don't know how to be in a relationship. And it is unfortunate, but sometimes it takes them some time away from that person to realize, yeah, she's the one. Now I'm ready. And so you'll see those guys sometimes loop back around. Now, when they loop back around, if that happens, depending on how you ghosted her or when you ghosted her, you might not be able to get back in, dude. But if this was the one, hopefully she can see a different side of why you did what you did. So I think it's important to not always make assumptions when we don't have all of the information. And I know that's hard, but most importantly, we cannot internalize it. We cannot make the assumption that he did this because of me, because I wasn't good enough, because I wasn't pretty enough, because I wasn't smart enough, because my booty wasn't big enough. Like, all those things that kind of run through women's heads about why a dude may have ghosted them. Like, we just got to stop. Because at the end of the day, most likely, it was all about him. Whether it was about him because he wasn't ready, because he was afraid, or just because he wasn't that good dude, it was still about him. So I just thought I would do that short video because it seems to keep coming up in session. Either way, if you haven't had an opportunity already to subscribe, make sure you do so.